My brother took credit for my success for 7 years. My parents called him the future of the family business. Clients called him a natural leader. Employees called him the boss. But every budget that actually worked had my numbers in it. Every project that finished on time had my schedule behind it. Every angry client who stayed had my phone calls calming them down. Every disaster Miles created became my emergency to fix before anyone noticed. Then, at an award dinner, my father stood in front of 200 people and announced that Miles would become president of the company. The award was for a project I had saved. The speech was written from reports I had created. The applause was for a man who could not explain the budget without my notes. That night, I stopped being angry. I became finished. 6 months after I walked away, Miles lost the clients, the contracts, the employees, and the reputation he had built with my work. And when my parents begged me to come back and save him, I told them the truth. You gave him the credit, now let him carry the consequences. My name is Evan Brooks. I was 27 when I finally understood that being useful in my family was not the same as being respected. My father, Richard Brooks, started Brooks Commercial Renovations when I was still in elementary school. Back then, it was just him, one old truck, a rented storage unit, and my mother answering phones from our kitchen table. Over the years, it grew into a real company. Restaurants, medical offices, retail spaces, small hotels, commercial build-outs. Nothing huge, but steady enough to put our last name on trucks and signs. My mother, Helen, handled admin, payroll, and the office. My father handled clients and big decisions. My older brother Miles handled charm. That was his actual job, whether anyone admitted it or not. Miles was 5 years older than me, good-looking in a polished, clean-shirt way, with a handshake that made people feel like they were already friends. He could talk about leadership, vision, growth, and legacy for 20 minutes without saying anything specific. Clients loved him at first. My parents loved him always. Miles was the face of the company. I was the one who made sure the face did not embarrass itself. By 27, I was officially a project coordinator. Unofficially, I was operations manager, estimator, scheduler, client support, permit chaser, budget repairman, subcontractor therapist, and the person everyone called when Miles promised something impossible. Miles would sit in a client meeting and say, "We can absolutely finish that in 8 weeks." Then I would spend the next 2 days rebuilding the schedule, begging the cabinet supplier, moving electrical rough in, calling inspectors, and explaining to subcontractors why their lives were about to get worse because Miles wanted to sound confident. When the project finished, Miles shook the client's hand. I fixed the punch list. When the client left a 5-star review, Miles reposted it. I paid the overtime. That was the pattern. And for a long time, I told myself it was fine. Family business, right? Everybody plays a role. Miles was good with people. I was good with systems. That was what my father always said. Miles brings them in. You help make it happen. Help. That word did a lot of unpaid labor. The first time Miles clearly took credit for my work was on the Harrington Bistro project. Harrington Bistro was a restaurant renovation downtown. Nice location, high expectations, very picky owner. The project was already behind when we got it because another contractor had messed up the original plans. The budget was tight, the timeline was stupid, and the owner, Grant Keller, had the patience of a man who had already fired one contractor and was prepared to make it a hobby. Miles landed the job. At least that was the family story. The real story was that Miles charmed Grant in the first meeting, then came back to the office with a signed letter of intent and a project scope full of holes. The kitchen equipment clearances were wrong. The permit timeline was unrealistic. The plumbing subcontractor he promised was not available. The floor supplier had a 6-week lead time. And somehow Miles had told Grant we could do it all in 10 weeks. I remember staring at the file and saying, "This is not a project. This is a hostage situation." Miles laughed. "Come on, Evan, you always figure it out. That should have been printed on the company trucks. You always figure it out." So I did. I stayed late for 9 nights in a row. I found another plumbing subcontractor. I negotiated alternate flooring that looked close enough to the design. I got the city inspector on the phone twice. I rewrote the schedule in phases so Grant could start hiring staff before final completion. I rebuilt the budget line by line because Miles had forgotten things like grease trap work, fire suppression modifications, and, reality. Grant and I spoke almost every day. At first, he was sharp with me. By week 3, he was calling me directly instead of Miles. By week 8, he trusted me. By week 10, the restaurant opened. Barely, but it opened. At the final walkthrough, Grant shook Mila's hand and said, "I have to admit, when this started, I thought we were dead. Your plan saved it." Miles smiled like a man accepting an Oscar. Leadership is about staying calm under pressure. I stood 3 feet away holding the actual punch list. Miles did not look at me. He did not mention me. He did not say, "Evan rebuilt the schedule." He did not say, Evan handled the city. He did not say, Evan was the reason your restaurant opened. He just accepted the praise like it had been addressed correctly. Afterward, in the parking lot, I said, that was my plan. Miles took out his sunglasses and gave me that easy grin. Relax, we're family. My win is your win. No. Miles. Your win is your win. My work is also somehow your win. He sighed like I was being childish. You want me to embarrass you in front of clients by listing every little thing you did? Every little thing? You know what I mean. I saved the project. And the company got paid. You're welcome. That was the first time I realized Miles did not think he was stealing from me. He thought my work already belonged to him. I brought it up to my parents the next day. That went exactly how you think it did. Dad sat behind his desk, reading a vendor invoice, while Mom stood near the filing cabinet pretending not to listen. Miles took credit for the Harrington save, I said. Dad did not look up. Miles handled the client relationship. I handled the project. You both did. No. He made the promise. I fixed the promise. Dad finally looked up. Evan. Do not start competing with your brother. There it was. If Miles took credit, it was leadership. If I wanted credit, it was competition. Mom stepped in with her gentle voice. You know how much you matter behind the scenes. I looked at her. Behind the scenes is where people put things they do not want the audience to notice. She frowned. That is not fair. No. Mom. That is accurate. Dad leaned back. Miles is better with clients. That is just his role. You are excellent in operations. That is your role. Then give me the title. Silence. That was interesting. Dad looked away first. We'll discuss titles when the time is right. The time was apparently never right. 2 weeks later, Miles was promoted to Vice President of Business Development. I got a new laptop and more projects. My parents called that balance. For the next several years, Miles built his reputation on my exhaustion. He gave presentations using reports I wrote. He quoted budget numbers I calculated. He promised schedules I had warned against. He accepted praise for projects he barely understood. At a regional contractor breakfast, he described his workflow for managing restaurant build-outs. I recognized every step because I had written the workflow after 3 failed handoffs nearly cost us a client. At a company meeting, he talked about his team-first approach while I sat in the back with a phone full of unread subcontractor messages. At a client lunch, he used my risk assessment like it had come from his own head. When the client asked a technical question, Miles turned to me and said, Evan can explain the boring parts. The boring parts. The parts that kept lawsuits away. The parts that kept crews paid. The parts that made sure a building could actually open. My girlfriend Laura saw it before I fully admitted it. Laura Bennett was a civil engineer. Practical, direct, and allergic to nonsense. We had been dating for about a year when she attended a company holiday party with me. Miles spent the night telling everyone about the year's biggest project wins. I spent the night having employees pull me aside to ask about inspection delays, change orders, and whether Miles had actually approved the overtime he promised. On the drive home, Laura was quiet. Then she said, Do you know what your family is doing? I laughed. That is a big question. They are not treating you like an employee. They are treating you like an engine they keep hidden under the hood while Miles poses next to the car. I said nothing. She continued. They do not think Miles is better because he does more. They think he is better because he makes them feel important. That hit harder than I expected. Because she was right. Miles made my parents feel like founders of a legacy. I made sure the legacy did not miss payroll. Big difference. Laura reached over and squeezed my hand. You are not being humble, Evan. You are being erased. That was the night I started saving proof. Not because I had some master revenge plan. I just needed to remind myself I was not crazy. Emails where I sent Miles complete client briefs before meetings. Texts where he asked, what is the answer if they ask about budget? Documents with my track changes. Schedules I created. Reports he presented. Client messages thanking me directly. Subcontractor threads where I cleaned up his promises. I made folders. Harrington Bistro. Westlake Dental. Carter Medical Plaza. Oakview Retail Center. The more I saved, the more obvious it became. Miles had not stolen one idea. He had built a career out of my silence. The breaking point came at the Carolina Commercial Contractors Association dinner. Brooks Commercial Renovations was nominated for a regional award for the Carter Medical Plaza renovation. It was a medical clinic conversion in an old retail building, and it had been a nightmare from day one. Bad original drawings. Mold behind 2 walls. Electrical service issues. Delayed permits. A client board that changed its mind every 7 business minutes. Miles had nearly lost the account twice. I saved it. I found the environmental remediation team. I renegotiated the electrical work. I kept the client board updated with weekly reports. I created a phase schedule that let them open 2 wings while final work continued in the back. I caught a budget error that would have cost us $80,000. The project finished 3 days early, under revised budget. The client loved us. And by us, they mostly meant me, but Miles was the one in the photos. At the award dinner, I wore a dark suit Laura helped me pick out. I remember feeling nervous, but also hopeful in a stupid way. My father had hinted there would be announcements about the company's future. For years, he had said we would discuss leadership structure. I thought maybe tonight he would finally acknowledge what I did. That hope lasted until Miles walked onto the stage to accept the award. He smiled at the crowd. He talked about leadership. He talked about vision. He talked about the importance of staying calm when projects became complicated. He used 3 sentences from my final report. Word for word. Then he thanked my parents. He thanked the client. He thanked the entire Brooks team. Not me. The entire Brooks team. I was sitting 2 tables away from the stage, becoming less of a person with every clap. Then my father stood. That was not planned. At least, not as far as I knew. He took the microphone from Miles, laughed warmly, and said, "Since we are celebrating the future tonight, Helen and I want to make something official. Over the next year, Miles will begin transitioning into the role of president of Brooks Commercial Renovations." The room applauded. Miles looked surprised for exactly half a second. Then he hugged Dad. Mom cried. People stood. Someone at our table said, "That is beautiful." Laura's hand found mine under the table. She knew. I did not move. I watched my brother stand under the lights holding an award for a project I had saved while my father handed him the company I had been running from the shadows. Afterward, in the hallway outside the banquet room, I confronted Dad. Not loudly. That would have made it easier for them to call me emotional. I said, "You announced that without talking to me." Dad looked uncomfortable. It felt like the right moment. For who? Evan, do not do this tonight. There it is again. Not tonight. Not now. Not in front of clients. Not on Mila's big night. When exactly am I allowed to matter? Mom stepped between us. You matter. Of course you matter. Then why did you just announce Miles as president? Dad sighed. Miles has the presence to lead, and I do not? You are more valuable in operations. I laughed once. There is that word. Valuable. Like a machine. Mom looked hurt. That is not what he meant. Miles appeared behind them, still holding the award. Come on, Evan, he said. Do not be bitter. I looked at him. Bitter? You are great at what you do. Nobody is saying you are not. You just accepted an award for what I did. He rolled his eyes. You always make it sound like I do nothing. Explain the Carter change order timeline. He blinked. What? The change order timeline. Explain it. Dad said, enough. I did not look away from Miles. Explain the remediation sequence. Miles' jaw tightened. This is stupid. Explain the revised electrical budget. He stepped closer. You are not really CEO material, Evan. This is exactly why. That was it. Not the award. Not the announcement. That sentence. You are not really CEO material. I had spent years building a throne for a man who thought I was not fit to sit in a chair. Something in me went quiet. Laura saw it happen. My mother said, Evan, please. Do not ruin your brother's night. I looked at her. I am not ruining anything. Then I turned to Dad. I will have my resignation letter on your desk Monday morning. Dad laughed once. Like I had made a joke. Do not be dramatic. Miles shook his head. You will be back in 2 weeks. You love fixing things too much. I looked at him. No. Miles. I loved thinking one day you would stop breaking them on purpose. Then I walked out. Monday morning, my resignation was on Dad's desk. He called me into his office at 8:13. Mom was there. Miles was not, which told me they still thought this was a parent-child issue, not a business decision. Dad held the letter like it smelled bad. What is this? My resignation. Stop it. No. You are angry. Take a week. I am not angry. Mom's eyes were red. Evan, you cannot just leave. I can. I am. Dad stood. This company is your family. No. This company is your company. Miles is your future. I am your backup system. That is not fair. Fair left the room at the award dinner. Mom said softly, what do you want? A title? A raise? We can discuss that. I almost laughed. After 7 years, my value had finally become negotiable because I was leaving. I wanted respect before I had to threaten absence to get it. Dad's face hardened. You are making a mistake. Maybe. You think clients will follow you? I did not say that. You think you can do this without us? I looked around his office. Photos of completed projects lined the wall. Projects I had scheduled. Projects I had saved. Projects Miles had smiled beside. Yes, I said, I do. I gave 3 weeks notice because I was professional. Also because I did not want anyone saying I had sabotaged active jobs. I wrote clean transition notes. Detailed status reports. vendor contact sheets, permit timelines, budget risk summaries. Then I sent a professional email to every active client. It has been a pleasure supporting your projects. I will be leaving Brooks Commercial Renovations on Friday. Please contact Miles Brooks for future project coordination. I kept it simple. No drama, no accusations, no sales pitch. Within an hour, my inbox started filling. Grant Keller wrote first. Wait. You are leaving? You have been the one coordinating our Oakview project? Then Dr. Patel from Westlake Dental. Evan, can we speak privately before your last day? Then a retail client. Where are you going next? Then a subcontractor. So who do we actually call now? That one made me laugh. For 7 years, my parents had insisted Miles was the relationship guy. Funny how many relationships had my phone number. On my last day, Miles walked into my office while I was boxing up my books. He leaned against the doorframe. Feels dramatic. I kept packing. What does? This whole thing. Leaving because you did not get enough applause. I placed a notebook in the box. You still think this is about applause? What else is it? Ownership. He scoffed. You worked for the company. The work belongs to the company. I looked at him. And the credit? He did not answer. I smiled a little. That is what I thought. He looked annoyed. You will regret this. No, Miles. You will notice it. I left Brooks Commercial Renovations at 5:00 p.m. on a Friday. Laura took me out for dinner that night. I expected to feel excited. Instead, I felt strange. Grief does not only come when you lose good things. Sometimes it comes when you finally admit something was never what you needed it to be. I had wanted my family to see me. Instead, I had to leave the room to prove I had been there. 2 months later, I started Stonebridge Commercial Group. Small office. 1 assistant. 1 part-time estimator. 1 old conference table I bought from a company liquidation sale. Laura helped me paint the office over a weekend. We ate takeout on the floor and joked that at least if I failed, I would fail with good lighting. Grant Keller became my first major client. He called me the week after I officially opened. I do not want to make this awkward, he said. That is a strong opening. He laughed. I have a project Brooks is bidding on. Okay, I want your firm to bid too. Grant, I do not want to poach clients from my family. I am not livestock, Evan. I choose who I work with. That sentence did more for me than he knew. Clients were not leaving because I stole them. They were leaving because they had finally realized who had been doing the work. Stonebridge grew faster than I expected, but not magically. There were hard months. Scary months. Payroll weeks that made my stomach hurt. Clients who paid late. Vendors who wanted longer credit histories. Insurance paperwork that made me question whether civilization had gone too far. But it was mine. Every win had my name on it. Every problem was mine too, and somehow that felt cleaner than fixing disasters Miles created while he accepted applause. 6 months after I left, Brooks Commercial Renovations started cracking. I heard it first from subcontractors. Your brother missed the permit deadline on Hawthorne Retail. Brooks is behind on the clinic job. Miles promised demo before the asbestos clearance. Can you believe that? Yes. I could believe that. Then clients started calling. I kept boundaries. If they were under contract with Brooks, I told them to speak with Brooks. If they ended their relationship legally and wanted a proposal, I gave them one. I did not sabotage. I did not lie. I did not need to. Miles was finally running the company himself, and that was enough. By month 8, 2 project managers had quit. By month 9, vendors started requiring upfront payment. By month 10, Grant told me Brooks had lost the Oakview expansion. By month 11, my father called. I let it go to voicemail. Then mom called. Then dad again. Then a text. Call me. Important. I called the next morning. Dad answered immediately. Evan. Dad. We need to talk. About? The company. Of course. Mom got on the line too. She said, honey, things have been difficult. I waited. Dad said, Miles has had some challenges. Challenges. A beautiful family word for consequences. What kind of challenges? Scheduling problems. Client issues. Some budget overruns. How much? Dad exhaled. Enough that we need help. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the Stonebridge logo on my office wall. There it was. The call I always knew would come. Mom said, this is still your family's company. No, I said, you made it clear it was Miles' company. Dad's voice hardened. Do not Betty. I am not. I am being accurate. Miles grabbed the phone. Evan, stop acting like you are above this. We both know you can fix it. I closed my eyes. Even drowning, he still sounded entitled to my hands. I probably could. Silence. Then Miles said, so come fix it. No. Mom gasped softly. Dad said, Evan. I said, you gave him the credit. Now let him carry the consequences. Nobody spoke. Then Miles laughed bitterly. You are enjoying this. No. I am busy. I hung up. They showed up at my office 2 days later, all three of them. Dad looked tired. Mom looked scared. Miles looked angry, which was easier for him than ashamed. My assistant walked them into the conference room. I gave her a look that said stay close, and she gave me one back that said already planning to listen through the wall. I sat across from my family at my own conference table. That mattered. Dad looked around the room. Framed project photos, client thank you letters. A regional business magazine with my name and a small feature, Stonebridge Commercial Group on the glass door. For once, the evidence was hard to ignore. Mom said, "You built something impressive." I nodded. I did. Miles rolled his eyes. "Subtle as a brick, my brother." Dad cleared his throat. "We need you to come back temporarily." "No. You have not heard the details. I know the pattern." Mom clasped her hands. "Evan. Please. The company is in danger." I looked at Dad. "What happened?" He hesitated. Miles said, "Some clients overreacted." I laughed once. That was not professional. But I allowed myself one. Dad sighed. "Hawthorne Retail is threatening legal action. The clinic expansion is behind schedule. Oakview canceled. Vendors are tightening terms. The bank is reviewing the credit line." I looked at Miles. "And you want me to stabilize things?" He crossed his arms. "You know the systems." "No. Miles. I built the systems." Dad said, "We can discuss compensation." I smiled. "There it is. Now that the building is on fire, you have discovered the value of water." Mom's eyes filled. "We did not realize how much you were carrying." I looked at her. "You did not realize because you never wanted to look." She flinched. I continued, "Miles was easier to celebrate. I was easier to use." Dad looked down. Miles snapped, "You think you are so important." "No," I said. "I spent 7 years being told I was not." He had no answer for that. Dad leaned forward. "What would it take?" "For what?" "For you to help." I thought about it. Then I slid a folder across the table. Miles smirked. "You came prepared." "I always did." That was the problem. Dad opened the folder. Inside was a list of restructuring consultants, legal advisors, project recovery specialists, and commercial accountants. Dad looked up slowly. "What is this?" "Help." Mom whispered, "We need you." "No. You need what I know how to do. There is a difference." Miles stood. "So that is it. You are going to let Dad's company collapse?" I stood too. "No, Miles. You are going to lead the company you accepted in front of 200 people." His face went red. "You are a selfish bastard." "No. Selfish was taking someone's work, name, and future while calling it teamwork." Mom started crying. Dad looked suddenly older. "Evan," he said quietly. "I made mistakes." I looked at him. "Yes. I should have seen what you were doing." "Yes. I should have given you the title." "Yes. I should not have announced Miles that night." I waited. He swallowed. "And I should have thanked you." That one almost got me. Almost. But apologies are not time machines. They are just words arriving after the damage has already moved in. I nodded. "Thank you for saying that." Mom looked hopeful. "So you will help?" "No." Her face fell. "I accept that you regret it," I said. "But I am not going back into a company where my value was only recognized after my absence became expensive." Dad closed the folder. Miles muttered, "Unbelievable." I looked at him. "For years, you stood in front of my work and called it leadership. Now leadership is yours. Lead." He walked out first. Mom followed, crying. Dad stayed behind for a moment. At the door, he turned. "Was it always you?" I knew what he meant. The projects. The clients. The saved contracts. The structure. I could have softened it. But I was done softening the truth for people who had used my silence as shelter. "Yes," I said. "Mostly." He nodded once, like a man accepting a bill he should have expected. Then he left. Brooks' commercial renovations did not fully collapse overnight. Businesses rarely do. They shrink first. Then they sell trucks. Then they lose good employees. Then the best clients stop calling. Then one day, the sign is still on the building, but everyone knows the company is already gone. That was what happened. Miles lost the president transition. Dad stayed on longer than planned. Mom retired early, though everyone knew it was because she could not stand watching clients ask for me. The company downsized to smaller residential jobs and basic commercial repairs. The big build-outs were over. Miles eventually left and took a sales job with a materials supplier. I heard he was good at it. That made sense. Selling had always been his skill. Delivering was the part he borrowed from me. Stonebridge kept growing. Grant Keller introduced me to 2 new clients. Westlake Dental came over after their contract with Brooks ended. A regional retail group hired us for 3 locations. We hired more staff. Then more. Laura and I got married in the second year of Stonebridge. At the wedding, there was no dramatic family showdown. My parents came. Miles did not. That was fine. Dad shook my hand at the reception and said, "I am proud of you." I believed he meant it. I also knew I no longer needed it. That was freedom. Months later, I stood outside our new office building while workers installed the Stonebridge sign. White letters on dark metal. Simple. Clean. My name was not huge. It did not need to be. It was on the paperwork. On the contracts. On the payroll. On the decisions. On the company I built without hiding behind anyone else's ego. Laura stood beside me with 2 coffees. "Looks good," she said. "Yeah. You okay?" I watched the installers adjust the final letter. "I think so." "You do not sound sure." I smiled. "I am just thinking about how long I waited for them to put my name somewhere it belonged." She handed me the coffee. "And now?" I looked at the sign. Now I did it myself. My brother took credit for my success because my family let him. But when I walked away, the truth did not need a speech. It showed up in missed deadlines, angry clients, unpaid vendors, empty conference rooms, and phone calls they did not know how to answer. Miles had the title. I had the skill. Miles had the applause. I had the relationships. Miles had the office my father gave him. I had the foundation nobody noticed until it was gone. And once I stopped carrying him, he finally had to stand on his own. He lost everything that was never really his. I built something that was mine. And this time, my name was on the door. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you really like our videos, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day.